from having the short end of the stick at the end of this process.
That is something that we are very concerned about and that we're considering as we have these discussions with the proprietary departments, is protecting the people who believe that their positions are going to be saved, from shortly thereafter being displaced by someone who had more seniority than them. Yeah. Like you said, everyone would.
And I deeply respect the civil service rules, but I want to make sure that if we are doing something that is acceptable and good for the employee outside of the civil service rules before we get to the layoff process, I don't want to have the civil service rules completely thwart that effort. I guess I'm saying the same thing 3 times over, but I want to get to past history. You did say last time we did something of this magnitude. I don't think we've ever done something of this magnitude, of this proposed magnitude.
Correct.
Because in 09-10, it was, remind me of how many folks in personnel worked for how long to get how many people to the tail end of this sad story.
So the layoff and displacement process, as discussed, is owned by the personnel department. We carry out the process. In the 2009-2010 area, the personnel department allocated 25 analysts and 25 support staff, 50 people, to the process of calculating layoffs. Over an 8-month sort of cumulative period of time, that group of people from the personnel department was able to effectuate 461 layoffs, 600 transfers, and 105 displacements.
So we had 50 people in the personnel department. Query whether we will have that today. We had 1 payroll system, Pacer. Now we have 2. And those 50 people worked, I'm sure, pretty hard for about 8 months and effectuated 600 transfers, 400 layoffs, and some
105 displacements.
And 105 displacements. Here, the assumptions are whatever resources we have using Pacer and Workday, we will presumably, the assumption is we'll be able to process, Siri thinks I just asked her a question. I'll be able to process 1,600 folks in 4 months. That seems like a tall order.
It is certainly a tall order. We are endeavoring
3
to
months,
work
excuse me, I'm sorry.
on a variety of, I thought it was 4
Oh,
months.
4 months, 4
It's
months,
4
you're
months.
right. Don't mean
We're
to stress you out.
endeavoring to create several different work streams to build as much of sort of process efficiency into that, which also includes training. I will be asking the entire department of personnel to be trained at least on a low level to perform this work of layoff calculations. I don't know how many people ultimately will be needed because I don't know how many people will land in the adopted budget, but I would expect to allocate at least double the number of positions as was allocated in the past because we have a greater magnitude of work. So I don't know. I will have to figure out what positions are available to me within the personnel department. And not to go deep into the personnel department budget, but we will have to look into who is available to perform the work, to perform the calculations, but we have begun the training already internally, and we do expect to train everyone to conduct these calculations. To the extent that we are able to develop systems that can receive information about the civil service rules and the charter rules so that a calculation can be done with an actual calculator rather than manual calculations, we will work on that, but we will certainly spend quite a bit of time verifying that information because these are highly impactful real-life decisions for real people, and we certainly wouldn't want to rely on a calculator without a number of verifications to ensure fairness in the process.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Well said.
Councilwoman Hutt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Chair of Personnel. I too sit on Personnel. I'm concerned about the workload on your current personnel team And I'm interested in knowing how will you double up on this, on the folks that will be trained on. One thing I heard you say is manual operations to make this happen, and then utilizing whatever the new systems you say you have. How do you get that team together?
At present, I would say that that is a calculation that the personnel department will be working on to ultimately manage the work. There's a lot of work, that all departments do every day with their regular staff. This type of assignment is an assignment that is a personnel department assignment, but it is something that certainly we would not receive additional resources to do. So positions that are currently working on various systems programs within the personnel department would have to be reallocated, at least temporarily, to not just training up, but to actually performing the calculations and to the review. So ultimately, how the department is internally restructured temporarily to accommodate this work, that is yet to be determined, but it is something that we do anticipate and recognize that we will have to determine and likely in short order.
And then I just have a little piggyback on that part. When we're moving folks into these different spaces, you talked a lot about work history.
Yes.
Does this jeopardize their retirement or their, what does that look like?
That's a very good question. I don't see how it would really jeopardize
Because their
retirement,
work
but there
history,
are,
remember you spent so much.
right, it's their
talking
work
about-
history. I think, I would say, based on my knowledge, and Vince will correct me, I'm fine with that. It will, to a certain degree, depend on the tier of employment, of LACER's status, and this is definitely a much better question for LACER's, but broadly, if you're tier 1 and you're looking at, I think, the highest 1 year of salary, that would still apply. For tier 3 employees, I believe it's the final 3 years of salary. So I could imagine that there could be some impact on employees who are displaced that are tier 3 members.
Thank you.
And just to
Thank
add,
you.
Yeah, it's on.
yeah, just to add, if there's any corrections to employee job histories that would impact their seniority, we'll make those corrections. So it would be something that should have been corrected in the first place and made right. So this is an opportunity as well to clean up our records. So in a sense, it wouldn't affect them negatively, it would affect them positively because we're going through the records with the employee and the department to make any corrections necessary.
Thank you.
Okay, and just colleagues, we're going to talk about personnel's budget itself tomorrow. So they're coming back to the table. So any other questions? Councilwoman Hernandez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And this might be for tomorrow, so please let me know. But given that the proposed layoff process sounds very arduous for both you and our team members, what is the actual cost savings for this process, given that many of personnel's own staff who would handle this process are proposed to be let go?
That might be a question for tomorrow and possibly a question for the office of the CAO. But I don't want to burden them if it's not really a question appropriate for them. I don't have a sense of what the cost savings cross-comparative analysis would be, but I can try to report back to you tomorrow to the extent that that information is available.
Great, thank you. Yes, if you could make very clear for tomorrow what, you gave us a timeline, right? And you gave us, you gave us a lot of information, the timeline, the process that you'll go through, but what does that actually look like in numbers? So if this is the timeline to lay off, how much are we actually saving because it's taking us this many months to conduct that process? That's kind of the information I want to know, if this is a worthwhile process where it will lead to savings.
Well, what I can say is, to the extent that there's savings assumed in the budget, what I would expect is that not all employee job histories are complicated, and not all people have displacement, status or displacement rights. To the extent that newer employees, and it's hard to say because these are new employees who just came on board with the city, to the extent that they have less status, that those types of histories would be easier to be calculated. And to the extent that there are more complicated job histories that might take longer and perhaps even longer than the assumed savings in the budget, it's quite possible that those two could offset. The reality is, until we know what's in front of us and until we start performing the calculations, we won't know how quickly we will be able to assume earlier savings that would offset the longer process calculations, which might go past the savings, the anticipated savings deadline of the 4 months that's assumed in the, the 8 months that's assumed in the budget. So there could be an offset by conducting layoffs earlier to the fact that there may be layoffs conducted later, but that is the best answer that I can probably give without digging into some deep financial numbers.
Great, thank you so much. Could we be in a situation where, and you might have said this, and forgive me if I missed it, but let's say team member A gets bumped down to a different position, would he be getting, or they be getting paid their original salary, but just doing different work?
No.
So their salary would drop with the drop in position?
Yes, when they would go to, if an employee displaces to a lower status class, then they assume that that class role and the salary that comes with it and the duties and responsibilities. And I think that's essentially, where the savings is identified in the budget, is the differences between that higher level salary and the sort of lower level position that they bump into.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman.
All right, thank you. We're going to turn to Councilmember Blumenfield, and then if it's all right with folks, we're going to wrap and move on. I want to make sure we can get to everybody. We're supposed to wrap by 7 p.m., and we've got 1, 2, 3 more departments. Councilmember Blumenfield.
Okay, it just seems this is an incredibly time-consuming process. It will be. The appeal, how long does that take? If somebody, is saying they're getting bumped, and then they say, oh, but I have different status, is there a time frame on those? Because I imagine that could kick it.
I'll ask Vince to answer that question.
They have 5 days to submit their appeal to the Civil Service Office, and then from that point, the Civil Service will have a process which has yet to be adopted in terms of they'll try to quickly get to it so that way the employee is not waiting for a long period of time. So that process will be sent to the commission as we move along. It'll probably mirror the process that was set up back in 2010.
Okay, and then, all of this, you're saying is still manual calculations, which that's also going to take forever.
Presently, so we are working to create a process where it won't have to be manual. Even though it was manual, 15 years ago, we are 15 years advanced, in terms of technology. So we are hoping to build a system. A system is not yet built, so I cannot guarantee that a system will be able to be used, but that is the goal.
Right, this is, I hate to bring AI into this, but vast amounts of data, and it's sort of made for that, but just to determine the status and all of those things. Because as it is, it took so long to get those 480. I don't know how we see a lot of the savings unless we have a faster process.
We also do have the learnings of that time. There are people, including Vince here, who is leading the sort of layoff process team, who has, I think we will be able to ramp up faster than the personnel department did years ago. But, once they started to dig into the process, things became more fluid. We are still in a ramp-up process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to move now to City Attorney, and then Controller, then Office of Finance, and General Services. welcome. So we are running way late. We've all read your letter, Madam City Attorney. Is there anything you'd like to highlight in particular? Otherwise, we can just jump right into questions. That's okay.
No, I'm happy to jump into questions.
Okay, great. I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember McCosker again to lead our questions on this. Oh, yeah, I can get us started. Sorry about that. So this year, we significantly exceeded the amount budgeted to pay out lawsuits. Is the proposed budget an accurate reflection of expected costs of litigation, including settlements?
That's incredibly hard to predict, as I think you all know. Do you want to take that one, Chief Deputy Mills? By the way, do you know everyone who's at the table with me?
Yes.
This is my Chief Deputy, Denise Mills, my other Chief Deputy, Valerie Flores, and our Director of Finance, Christina Gerber.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I fear that every time you see my face, you think I'm going to ask you for $100 million. I'm not today. But I will say that we are still understaffed, even with this proposed budget for our office. I am actively, in fact, today, I spent a considerable amount of time working on the reports back to Budget, Finance, and City Council, and one of them is our future office plan. I believe it was Councilmember McCosker that asked us for a plan on how we could get to a position where we're fully staffed so that we can handle all of our cases and help reduce the liabilities by more motion work and that type of thing. So you will have that at the end of May so that we can speak to it at the next FSR. And I'm also preparing the liabilities report. We got the county's numbers, and so I'm trying to pull out of there the stuff that we can actually compare to our numbers. So you'll be getting both of those at the same time. But to answer your question, this budget will keep us going. If we're able to, fill our vacancies and everything, we can keep going. But it still doesn't get us to a point where we're ideally staffed to handle all the motion work that we would like to handle.
Understood. We hear in closed session all the time from your overworked litigators. What type of ordinance or adjustments to the admin code would your office need to go after nuisance abatement homes or illegal cannabis operators? And I don't expect you to answer that right now. It's going to prompt a memo. But if you do want to speak briefly to what that would require.
We are looking at the administrative code in a couple of different areas, Council Member. One of them is the fines and violations against real estate, against property owners, and what would be necessary to have those charges automatically appear on a property tax bill.
Wonderful. I have a memo. I'd like to add an instruction to Exhibit H to direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance for consideration by council to impose liens or other steps to recover costs associated with the city's actions to resolve nuisance properties and preserve public safety.
Point of personal privilege, can we change the word direct or instruct
Request.
to request?
Request.
Thank you much, ma'am.
Oh, Councilwoman Hutt, follow up.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Yaroslavsky. This is really important in CD10. I do have a couple of questions. Is the city in the process of constituting an interdepartmental task force to go after illegal cannabis?
I think we've been awaiting the outcome of this process, Council Member. The Department of Cannabis Regulation currently primarily monitors those with permits as opposed to enforcing and closing down illegal cannabis shops. My office has historically handled those against the operator out of the criminal branch, and this change to the admin code that I mentioned for property owners is intended to be another tool in the toolbox as against illegal cannabis operations, as well as other building code violations and nuisance abatement.
Is the DMV, is the DWP involved in any
In illegal
against
cannabis?
the landowners
No.
or the business owners?
In certain cases, there can be power shutoffs to illegal grow houses by DWP.
Yeah, thank you. And then my last question is, And it's really a statement and a question. With the proposed elimination of street services investigators, it makes sense to me to explore the possibility of loaning these investigators to the city attorney's office for a couple of years and really attacking illegal cannabis operations in the city. The fines and penalties will really make a difference. And the staff would be able to pay for itself in turn, which would increase our revenues from the cannabis tax. So I'd like to include in the request for a report back that we explore the possibilities of loaning street services investigators to the city attorney's office for illegal cannabis enforcement.
Yeah, I think in the budget as we originally proposed it, we did have a number of requests for investigators. We have deferred all of the requests for additional staffing to fit within the plan that you all asked us back for. That's why my letter did not address any of those positions. It isn't that they're not necessary. It's just that rather than asking piecemeal through the budget process and then coming back to you in June with something else, we thought we would come back to you with a comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, any other questions for, yes, Councilmember Kosker.
Thanks very much. Yes, and thank you. I did ask for that more comprehensive review of how you could grow the office to be able to handle just the crushing caseload that you have. So I look forward to that. But going back to the chair's question and the note in H, requesting you to do an analysis or an ordinance on code enforcement, I think there's also and we have a pending motion on that as well. I think there's also a corollary in whether or not the ACE program could be an administrative process that rides side by side with the criminal enforcement program. Do I have that right?
Yes, you do, council member, and that is one of the areas of my office that I will be looking at, because right now the ACE program in my criminal branch performs more of an adjudicative function with respect to citations issued by other departments. And I'm looking at how we, rather than adjudicating those citations, really move to a civil ACE program where we issue the citation, we give the property owner an opportunity to contest, and otherwise it appears on the property bill.
And I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth, because one of the things that I'd like to see, and I think you'd like to see, is a criminal code enforcement process that's uniform and quick and can get us on the tax rolls as quickly as possible. And there are a number of processes out there in the world, in our municipal code and our administrative code, and we're kind of looking to see whether we can consolidate those. But at the same time, I think it also makes sense to have a purely administrative process that could be quick and would be appropriate for ACE in some cases.
Section 11 of the municipal code makes it clear that the charging of a code violation can come as a citation, an infraction, or a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
If you put everybody under the same house with the misdemeanor referrals going to the criminal branch, I believe that is the most efficient and effective way to handle it within my own office.
And efficient is going to be the key here. With diminishing dollars and diminishing resources, we want to make sure that we have a system we can count on, and one that moves quickly and is knowable, and we don't go back to the drawing board repeatedly, in 15 different council offices for different types of problems. That's not really a question. I know that's where you're trying to get, and I appreciate that. I want to switch gears, though. We have in the budget, I do see money in workers' comp at both the airport and DWP. But do you do the workers' comp at the port as well, and does the port pay for that?
Yes, and yes.
Okay, I didn't see it in the budget. I'm glad to know that. We also have a continuing appropriation for 7 positions at the LAPD Legal Support Group, and this goes back to a little pet project of discipline at the department, at the police department, and putting us in the best possible position to present a solid discipline case. Where are we with hiring those up, and how is that program performing, using city attorneys to present the essentially the chief's or the city's case on discipline?
There's actually 5 positions for the LAPD that they reimburse us for.
Okay.
And then there's 2 positions for the fire department, since they had many of the same issues on internal affairs.
I see.
And that's where you get to 7 positions. This is the first year of operation of that unit. It is, I believe, fully staffed. And I have already asked my own team to give a report comparing results. It's a little bit apples to oranges, because what I've asked for is compare civilian boards to civilian boards, because those boards tend to have a different outcome than boards that have law enforcement as part of the participants.
Great, great. And I'm hoping in this new year, especially with the money that we put in for charter reform, that will come back to police discipline and fold your efforts into that.
But they perform a critical function, because in order to make change and implement change in the practices that create the liability, when we make that recommendation, the chief's ruling on discipline has to stand. And so I do view those advocates as a critical part of the process, not only for the administration of the department, but for the reduction of liabilities and making sure that the department follows best practices.
Right, and I'm looking forward to those stats, because I think there was a lot of folks that believe that the chief's discipline recommendations weren't standing because civilians were involved. I think it was because the cases weren't properly presented, or could be. And I think a lot of us felt that city attorneys presenting those cases and arguing with an attorney on the other side would be a fairer fight.
It is fairer than having a police sergeant or captain up against, a union-provided lawyer.
Right, right. Last question for me. We saw and it affected our district, we saw a stop to the Community-Based Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative, the CVIPI program from the Office of Justice. And I think that's managed through your office. Are you aware of that, or am I getting too deep?
Yes, I'm very aware of that.
Tell me what happened, what's going on?
The Victims Assistance Program is administered by the county, but there's a component that was federally funded. What was called the XP part of the Victims Assistance Program, if I have it correct, is the part that the funding ceased as of December of last year. It was before the current administration. It was a funding that took place originally, I think, during COVID, and then just ended in December. At this point, what we are trying to quantify is the effect of other grants that we have been advised are likely to be delayed, curtailed, or eliminated. I don't have an answer for you on that.
Okay. It's important work that you do. It's important work that you do in partnership with some of our community groups, especially in Watts. And so I think we'll follow up offline on that.
We are trying to move a number of the individuals who were assigned and funded by that grant. We have not laid anybody off as a result of that as a result of the termination of that grant. How's that? But the individuals have been put to good use in filling other vacant positions within our office. So they've been transferred to where we needed witness coordinators, victims assistance services, whether funded by grants like Children Exposed to Violence, or whether general funding in connection with criminal courthouses where we have victims and we try to help them.
Right. I'm worried about the community group. It was your partner, and we'll have to, in a different way, figure out how we can fund their efforts and maybe bring it back. But
I'm happy to put together as soon as it shakes out. We just got a letter last night from the Department of Justice, I believe. Once I see the parameters of what is going to happen to the grant funding that we have, I'm happy to report back and see our way clear to how we can dedicate resources. We've been operating on baling wire and chewing gum, but hopefully if we can at least fill our vacant positions, we will have a little more capacity to address the city's priorities.
Great, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Blumenfield.
Thank you. Appreciate all the great work that you and your team do. I wanted to ask you, though, about the procurement rules promoting fair and open competition. Are important, but oftentimes it takes us a long time to get very low-value contracts approved because there's always this tension. We want to avoid any sort of problems, and so we give it a lot of scrutiny, but at the same time, when they're low value, is it really worth all that scrutiny? And so I'm just asking, I mean, and this makes it difficult for council offices and departments sometimes to plan, sponsor, assist local events, activities, especially when the budget has deep cuts. So is there something that we can do to speed up that process, so that we can get these low-value contracts approved quickly?
I think one of the things that we already did was increase the amount of the contract approval from my office from $5,000 to $25,000. That happened, I think, last year. Go ahead.
As part of the charter change process, you could state in the charter that by ordinance you could specify contracts below which competitive bidding, even though preferred, is not mandatory.
But that would have to be a charter motion, you're saying?
Yes, because currently the charter does not have a dollar limit on the competitive bidding mandates, but you could do that by ordinance if the charter allowed. So it's something for the future. And then if it's set by ordinance, as inflation or time goes on, you can see what's most effective in terms of the dollar amount.
The other thing I think you can do, council member, if it's the same vendor year over year, and we do try to be very respectful and speed through on discretionary funds, but if you know you have an event, every Memorial Day, you could put out a request for qualifications and have a panel and then award a 3-year contract, so that it's, or a 2-year contract or a 5-year contract, so that it's not something where you have to come back to the city attorney's office for or reopen the competitive bidding procedure for.
Okay, I appreciate that. I won't dwell on it. It's a frustration, and I see a lot of us spending a lot of time and money on things that have, the amount of time and money we are spending is more than the value of some of these contracts, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. But anyway, separate issue. Usually you guys, lots of lawsuits out there, and usually the longer it takes, okay, we don't pay for a long time. But there are a couple of lawsuits where if we can settle them quickly, we'll actually make more money. And the one I'm thinking of is the STAP, street furniture contract, that we're having this, the lawsuit litigation over the STAP contract. The sooner we get that either resolved or settled, we can start collecting more money and maybe even banking more money into this budget because there's substantial money there. Is there anything that we can do to speed that up?
I don't know where we are on that litigation right now. I didn't come prepared to address that. So we can certainly give you a briefing back.
Sure. And I ask it it comes up here in the budget context because I look at that one as that's money in the bank that every month that litigation goes is money that we're not getting. And that's it.
Would you like us to include that? Well, it's litigation, so I'd rather do that in a briefing in closed session.
That's fine.
The status of the litigation, if that's all right.
Status of the litigation. But really, is there anything that we can do to help you prioritize litigation such as this? The status of that I'm happy to hear, but from a budget perspective, is there anything that we can do to help prioritize those cases that can actually net us funding? And this is the one that comes to mind, that it's been out there for a while, and if we could just get it done, we could get some money.
Let's put it this way, you just called it to my attention.
Okay.
Trust me, we will pay attention to it.
Great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. No more questions? Oh, all right, last one.
I would like to request a memo to forecast the next year of liability payouts based on cases in the queue, please.
Based on what?
Based on cases in the queue.
In the queue.
Yes.
You are getting 2 reports. Denise, do you want to take this at the end of May that deal with liabilities?
Right, so it's, at this point, it's almost impossible to predict what our liabilities next year will be. Come June, we'll know, actually, probably this month, we'll be able to tell you what payments are getting bumped to the next fiscal year, so we can tell you we're starting this many thousands in the hole. But
She's optimistic when she says thousands.
But it's often difficult to know what's going to go to trial because plaintiff's counsel can continue cases, a year or 2 years. Sometimes we'll come across great facts. We get a case dismissed that we thought we might have liability on. We win a summary judgment motion and a case goes away. And so our reserves goes down. So those things can be very, very difficult to predict. We can, at best, tell you, here's some big cases that could present big liabilities, and we expect they will resolve next fiscal year. We can sort of do some foreshadowing, and I can try to incorporate that in the reports back that I'll be submitting. But to try to give you a ballpark what I think they'll be next year, it's tough to do.
Could you give us a budget memo on perhaps like the top cases that, like this case, the worst outcome would be a $20 million payout. Could you give us like at least a handful of those, like a budget memo that includes some of that?
I can let you know what are some very high-profile cases where we could be facing big liability, but I wish it was more of a science. We had a case last year that that Budget and Finance and City Council approved the payout on, but we got hit for almost $4 million for someone who got a scratch on his finger from a rubber round fired by a police officer during a protest. We never in a million years would expect a $4 million verdict. So where we can try to estimate the value of a case, there are those one-off cases that just get these nuclear verdicts. And then there are cases that we expect we have liability on and we defense them, or we win on a summary judgment motion. So to answer your question, we can give you some heads up and warnings, like these cases could be dangerous.
Great.
Let me add one thing to that. We're not likely to do that in a budget report. We will do that in closed session if it's pending litigation. For example, the bi-monthly report that we give you that's public is cases we've already paid out on. That is not confidential information. The reports that we will be giving you at the end of next month will include payout cases where we know what the liability is, the case is over, there's no longer a privilege concern, but we're also going to give you a snapshot of pending matters that have not yet been settled, and that will be in closed session.
Okay, I'll accept the reports that y'all are working on and not ask for the budget memo then. But is there any way that we can get that sooner, or as we are deliberating all of this?
Are you talking about the 2 reports
Yes.
that I'm working on?
Yes.
If I didn't have a day job, I could get them to you sooner. But they're very intensive. I'm in the analysis portion now, so I've gotten the data, and it's like the one report, I'm analyzing county payouts versus ours on similar cases. They record their data a bit different, so that takes some time. And then on the office plan, I'm also analyzing costs of outside counsel on particular cases versus the cost of deputy city attorneys handling them. That takes a bit of time as well. So I am working on them on the weekends as well as during the week, and I'll get them to you as soon as I possibly can.
Okay, I appreciate that. I truly do. Thank you.
If I could add one bit of
Yes.
good news. So I recently was reviewing some jury questionnaires on a case that's in trial. And what was somewhat encouraging is that a lot of the prospective jurors are paying attention to the city's financial issues and have noted those in their response to questions like, would you award a huge verdict? And many people are paying attention and saying, but that means our streets don't get paved and our parks don't stay open. And so we're hopeful that maybe we'll have fewer nuclear verdicts this next fiscal year, because maybe our juries will be more mindful of where those dollars are actually coming from.
Great, thank you so much. That's exciting to hear that folks are making that analysis.
Can this be the last question,
Yes.
Councilwoman Hernandez? Okay, I
Yes.
just want to make sure we get to the other departments. We've got
Yes.
3 more. Okay, thanks.
My question is around the corrective action reports. You're gaining 6 positions within the risk management division. Will this lead to more completed corrective action reports for liability claims so that we can continue to make adjustments and corrections?
Council member, we do our corrective action reports. We talk to the department heads. They don't implement our recommendations. We can only do what we can do. We are lawyers. So one of the matters where I recommended originally against a settlement and then ultimately came in and recommended the settlement was the 8th case on the same practice in the span of a decade. I'm not going to name the department or the matter, but we do our best. What I would like to set up in terms of litigation, once we have lawyers who are handling less than 90 cases each, is a lifeline where their request for corrective action is referred not only to council as a whole as a piece of paper on the settlement recommendation, but actually referred to the committee that or the deputy mayor that supervises that particular department with the recommendation for corrective action, so that someone in charge, okay, because I'm certainly not in charge of other departments, can take steps to make sure that we're not banging our head against the wall all the time.
Thank you for that explanation. And in my short time of being on budget and finance, I can tell you that for many, many of the cases we see in front of us, there is no corrective action report attached to the case. On some cases there is, and sometimes when the corrective report is attached, sometimes it's fully filled out, very rarely. And I mean that, like, very rarely are they fully filled out with the corrective action steps. So I asked, are those?
We will take that note, and that's
Okay.
not supposed to happen. And so to the extent that sits in my office, we will make that correction.
Wonderful, and I'll make sure to communicate that.
Thank you.
As it comes up. But for these 6 positions, will they be helping out with that, or what would be their roles?
So the corrective action reports are supposed to be completed by the attorney that's handling the particular lawsuit. We don't rely on our claims or our risk managers to do
Yes, but my question is, the 6 positions for the risk management division, what will they be focusing on?
They're going to be triaging lawsuits as they come in, among other things, so that we set up a system where when a lawsuit comes in, instead of just getting assigned to a line deputy who already has too much to do, we can sort through as part of our claims process, what are the cases that carry the possibility of a nuclear verdict? No system is foolproof, but if we have people paying attention to that and sifting those cases out for early resolution, we think we will get better outcomes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on now to controller.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The Office of Controller, excuse me. Welcome, Mr. Mejia and team. We have read your letter. Is there anything you'd like to highlight, or should we jump straight into questions?
I made like a 4-minute little PowerPoint. If I
Can we
show
skip
you
that?
guys that. You know,
It would be much appreciated. Our butts have been in these seats for hours.
I worked so hard as an elected official to make this for you guys.
Well,
But,
we'll look at it. We all have it. We'll look at it later. Anything in particular that we should know about that's not in the letter, or that from the letter you just want to?
I mean, if we're gonna just jump straight to it, yeah, I would say one of the proposed requests that we have is if we can get additional overtime in our overtime budget. Right now, the proposed budget is currently $91,000, which is the same amount as the current fiscal year. And this fiscal year, we're actually estimated to spend nearly $500,000 on overtime because of the short staffing and the elimination of our 27 positions this fiscal year. So we are of the mindset where this overtime could actually help us during crunch time, and it's more honest because we know we're gonna spend towards that amount. But that was pretty much the only request that we had. We are pretty much happy with everything else in our budget because it does restore some of the positions of the 27 that were removed this fiscal year.
Okay, great. I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Blumenfield to ask the first few questions, and then we'll go from there.
All right, thanks. First off, thank you for developing potentially revenue-generating proposals. We all very much appreciate that. Appreciate you highlighting the possibility of doing more internal borrowing and thus reducing the size of the TRAN. We've talked about that a little bit with the CAO. Do you have an estimate of how much you think this could save in interest costs?
Yeah, so right now, in next fiscal year, we're actually estimated to save about 10 million. But if we can find more funds, if we can get to that 525 million, based on our analysis through our director of financial reporting, we actually think it might be more due to the proposed budget. It might be around $575 million that we need. So we need to find about an additional 250, and we're working on finding those funds right now. We've reached out to departments to see if we can use some of their special funds, but if we were to get that additional 250, that could yield about near the same amount, somewhere near 10 million or so.
So you think it's about 10 million, potentially, if we can do all those things, maybe another 10 million, so 20 total.
Say that again?
You said an additional 10, so potentially if it could be up to 20.
Well, the first 10 is already included in the proposed budget. That savings is already in there. So what you would see if we found that additional funds would just be the 10 million.
The 10 million. Still, 10 million is a lot of jobs.
And just to hit on that too, Councilmember, I know it was brought up about if we borrow from special funds, we'll have to pay interest on it. And I'll give you an example. For this fiscal year, we borrowed $125 million from Rec and Parks. We borrowed it in November, and we paid them back in December, principal and interest of about $400,000. So just to give you a sort of preview on how much it would cost if we were to borrow.
400,000. What was the baseline? You said,
100. Say that again.
You said we borrowed 400,000, or you said principal?
We borrowed 125 million from internally, from special funds.
And for a couple of months, and it was $400,000.
Only for 1 month. Yeah. We borrowed in November, and then we paid them back in December, the full 125, and then $400,000 in interest.
Okay. And obviously, the comparison to that is what is the interest rate that we're getting elsewhere?
TRAN. Yeah, correct.
And that fluctuates, especially with our crazy president and stuff that's happening there. Also appreciate you raising the issue of having the LACERs and the the firefighter pension doing the true up of contributions to our pension funds. We talked about that a little bit, and we're going to bring that up with the LAFPP when that's before us. We'll see, if we can book any savings there as well. I mean, that's I think is a very good suggestion, and appreciate you bringing that one up, and we'll see what we can get out of that, if not for this year, at least moving forward. That's, from my perspective, is a good idea. A lot of departments are facing cuts in administrative personnel, including those in finance and the payment functions. Does that present a risk to the city, and would it increase the workload for the controller's office?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of our accountants are not only short-staffed in the main function that they have to do, whether it's paying vendors, doing payroll, or appropriating funds. When other departments lack accountants, they actually have to come to us and ask for help. And when they submit work that is incorrect or improper, we actually have to go back and help them resubmit it. And essentially, we're doing the work twice. And because of the short staffing of accountants everywhere, it does add an additional layer of work.
Great. I'll just cut to the chase and ask for some report backs for both for the options for increasing the overtime, the 200,000, see what those options are, and also options on the 7 unfunded positions. And I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Just one question. In this especially challenging budget year, are there audits you're prioritizing to identify unused or improperly used funds.
Can you say that again, Chairwoman?
Given how hard the budget is this year, but generally, are there audits you're prioritizing to identify unused or improperly used funds?
Yes, so actually, when it comes to unused funds, that falls under Wally's division here at Financial Analysis and Reporting. And we do an analysis, and we actually, as of through February, there are about $71 million in idle funds, in special funds that haven't been used in 2 years. And through that work, you guys actually approved today in council $1.3 million of that we found, and you guys moved it to the general fund reserve. So we do that analysis. We could actually send you that analysis and show how much money is sitting there that hasn't been spent. But that's one way. And in addition to our fraud, waste, and abuse unit also touches on claims that have to deal with us either paying more than we think we should be doing. But that is an area that we get so many claims, about 700 fraud, waste, and abuse claims. And when we do find it, we actually can get some savings based on what we find and get that money back.
Great. Colleagues? Council member?
Yeah, thanks very much. I think Wilmington is a partial beneficiary of those fundings that you found. Hey, we spent some quality time this past year on HRP in committee, in Personnel Committee. Can you tell me how that's coming and where you feel we're at with the human resources implementation?
Yeah, so it's been a long way since June. I mean, not a full year yet, and it is probably the largest citywide transition for a system, and we've made a lot of progress. We still have a lot of work to do, but for the most part, employees are getting paid. We fixed a lot of the issues that happened early on, but we still have to do a lot of work that is manual. We get about over 2,000 help desk tickets every year. Right now, we have a backlog of 300 tickets open. So, we still have a lot of work in order to get it fully functional, and we do have some enhancements that we would like to go through, but that is definitely an area where we, some of these positions that will get restored will help us tremendously, and also the investment into technology.
And we recently contracted with the last of our dollars to bring on 2 people between now and the end of the year to help us clear up that 300 item backlog, and we're actually making progress on that. One issue that you'll want to take up with ITA is how much support will they be able to afford for the year beginning July 1st. We will not be completely caught up and have a fully functional system on July 1st. We're moving to get as much done before then as possible. The Tiger team that's working on fire has made a huge amount of progress, but we still have hiccups and we still have integration challenges.
Is it all about the backlog, or every 2 weeks are we seeing new set of tickets?
Not every 2 weeks. We did recently have a hiccup in police where a one-time-a-year payout of vacation triggered a glitch, which we quickly identified and were able to correct. But no, we're not seeing a lot of new issues, but we have a lot of backlog of MOUs that haven't been fed into the system, et cetera.
Got it. Are you looking for anything? I know you've talked about just the $200,000 in the overtime, and maybe that addresses some of this, but are you looking for anything else to be able to be fully functional on HRP?
Go ahead.
Not that we can give it to you, I'm just wondering.
Right. And that's sort of what we debated with when we requested our budget is, we always need help in payroll. We are very, very short-staffed, and the function of reviewing payments regarding payroll before it gets released, it's not sufficiently tasked for us to do that. For example, for the larger departments like fire and payroll, since they are not directly integrated, police and fire, since they're not directly integrated into HRP, what they upload manually into Workday, we have no controls to double check if what they're uploading is correct. So if they put in something for an employee for X amount, then that's it. So we would love to have the, more opportunity to actually do the role of a controller and actually review payments, and that goes for vendors, that goes for payroll. But, in terms of this budget deficit and the finances that we're going through, we only asked for what we thought.
But let's say that we do the NSS replacement at fire, for example. Assuming that we get the right technology, will that put you in a position to conduct more of a controller's role rather than a repairing, working with folks manually to repair payroll every 2 weeks?
Right, and so when it comes to NSS and the fire department for their sworn, that's mostly more for their internal operations and how they book their hours. And then, but it would still essentially, that payroll hours or those amounts would still then have to feed into Workday. It's not integrated still. So it would help fire tremendously, which is why they're advocating for it.
Right.
And it will help them with their payroll. But in terms of the internal control function of reviewing payments, and this will actually also help us analyze payments, before they're made to catch any issues beforehand. But because it's not integrated, it would be hard for us to do our job of what we call pre-review.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And reiterate that when ITA comes forward, the most important thing for us is the level of support that happens July 1st on. And so we hope the dialogue between the committee and ITA will produce sufficient support so we really can make the system not only work, but actually save work.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Hutt.
Hi. Hi, Mr. Controller. We talked about some of the resources that you might need in order to do audits. Are you looking at other departments? And if so, I'm interested in the discrepancies that we see in the Department of Cannabis regulations, their ability to oversee their state grant funds. In fact, this budget contemplates giving DCR $10 million in general fund for misspent state grant funds. So what resources would the Controller's Office need to conduct an audit on all of the state grants that have been awarded to and administered by DCR?
Yeah, so we can perform audits pretty much on any department or city program. I'd say number one, we would need to have more capacity. Right now, the Controller's Office only has 7 performance auditors for the entire city to audit at their, at whatever we'd like, including DCR or any other program. So that would be the biggest thing. And if you think about it, each audit consists of a team of 2 or 3 people. So for us, we're only able to do about 2 to 3 audits a year. So we would just need more resources.
So are you asking for those,
We actually will get 1 more in one of the positions that's being funded. But, a decade ago, the audit services used to be 40 people. So we're at 7. So
Okay.
We'll take what we could get. But we also do single audits too. But I think that might be more so for the federal. But we do some regulatory audit, compliance audits. But in order to do what you want, we would need more auditors.
Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for being here and the PowerPoint, which we will all
All right,
read
thank
later.
you.
Thanks a bunch for the time. Okay, next we're going to hear from the Office of Finance, and I'm going to ask that we just take 2 minutes before we get started. 1 minute.
We'll ask the port.
Hi, how are you? Good.
Good.
All right. Welcome. Thanks for being patient. We've all read your letter. Is there anything you'd like to highlight in particular, or should we jump straight to questions?
Diana Mangiolu. And very quickly, I'm joined by my team, Angela Bruman, Tom Juarez, and Matt Crawford. I think the things that I want to highlight hopefully answer a lot of the questions. So we have a presentation, but I'm going to cut that in half and just kind of go to the main points that I think are worth just spending a second talking about. We do believe that we have a proposal for the committee to consider that would mitigate some budget impacts and offset some citywide jobs. We are a revenue-generating department, so essentially we're asking the committee to spend money so that we can make more money for the city. So we have two revenue-generating proposals, and I'm going to go ahead and jump into the first one. We do have a PowerPoint. I don't know if it's possible to put that up. And I think the committee may have also received it. Let's jump to slide 4. Okay, so the first proposal essentially, no problem, thanks. First proposal essentially would be expanding our tax discovery unit. This is a program that we've been administering at the Office of Finance for close to 25 years. Essentially, we exchange information with various agencies, including state agencies like Franchise Tax Board, CDTFA, which is the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, along with other agencies. We do data sharing, and we identify businesses that should be registered with the City of LA but are not. And ultimately, the goal is to discover and register new businesses. So for the current fiscal year, just to give a sense of how it worked out for the 24-25 year, essentially, over a course of a year of mailing 140,000 communications, we were able to register an additional 13,000 new businesses that would not have been registered otherwise. And we have planned in our revenue forecast, in the business tax revenue forecast for 25-26, $9 million that was generated just from this program. So we see, however, that there's great potential to expand the program, and here's why. In the last several months, we've received over 3 times the workload that we typically would have received. So, and we're attributing this basically to a post-COVID boom. We're seeing that there's an opportunity to register not 13, but an additional 55,000 new business accounts, allowing us to book an additional 18 million that is currently not in the 25-26 revenue plan. We believe that a part of this 18 million would be ongoing, so the 26-27 year would realize a $10 million ongoing revenue from this effort for this for the next fiscal year. However, we would need additional resources, and here's where we're asking for the committee to spend money. We would need a total of 3.2 million in resources for this first project, which includes 15 tax compliance officers and 10 customer service specialists. These are positions that we currently do not have or will not have as a result of the vacancy reductions. We would also need an additional 200,000 in as-needed spending, 200,000 in overtime, and 400,000 in mailing services. So altogether, 3.2 million. But most important as well, coupled with the request, is the flexibility to be able to fill these positions right away. Because in order for this project to work and to be successful, we need to be able to fill these positions and have folks trained and ready to go by August. If we're not able to fill these positions by August, then we will not be able to book $18 million. So it's a bold, aggressive ask. We recognize that. We recognize that if we approach this the traditional way, that we won't be able to meet our goals. So we're asking the committee to grant us flexibility. So, and I'll take a second talking about that, but I'm going to dive into package number 2. So the second package would essentially enhance our collections division. In finance, when we have an account that we're not able to collect from, when we haven't heard from a taxpayer, we eventually send these cases over to the collections division. And for all the tax cases that we received, and we manage tax and non-tax cases in that division, the statute of limitations is 3 years, meaning we only have 3 years to collect. After 3 years, we can no longer collect. Given the reductions that we've had in our budget and organization the last couple of years, we've done some reorganizing. And we've also very much realized how we're not able to keep up with the workload. And so we're seeing that there's hundreds of cases with a value of a range from anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20 million total value that essentially we're not even touching because the statute of limitations is running out. And so we're essentially burning these cases. We know what the success rate is if we're able to work these cases. And so what essentially we're asking for is for the committee to dedicate resources. We're asking for 3 positions for a total of $365,000 so that we can book $2 million. Overall, the 2 packages together is $20 million. Again, in order for this to be realistic and for us to meet our goal of filling these positions by August, we would need to be able to fill right away. On the upside, we do see that there's an opportunity to possibly even take on displaced employees. If there is intent by this committee and the council to move forward with these plans, we believe that we could take advantage of any potential, for example, management analysts that may be displaced that would be interested in filling these positions. There's also a variety of customer service positions throughout the city that are potentially being cut. We would obviously need personnel support in order for this to happen. We recognize that their position is also being cut, but if we are going to move forward with this, then we would ask that they be provided that resource that they would need to help support us in this effort. So we do expect for there to be a lot of movement within our organization. We're at the lowest we've ever been. We've had our vacancies cut at this point, and in order for us to be able to move quickly, and we do believe that at this point, moving forward, any position that we attrit at finance is essentially, is going to result in revenue loss. So the other bold ask that I'm asking for is that the Office of Finance be exempt from the managed hiring process for the 25-26 year, and that we be provided the authority to fill our positions as we need. Again, we don't have any vacancies right now, so we're not going to be spending a lot of money that's unanticipated. We do have an expenditure plan, and I'm so sorry, I had a PowerPoint, and I was so busy rushing through it, I didn't even do this. So let's just jump to the total proposals and what we're looking at. This is slide number 6. To wrap it up, essentially, we have an expenditure plan to go along with the revenue plan. With the resources that we need, the 3.2 plus the 365,000, those 2 items would essentially be specifically for in order to implement the revenue proposals. We are also asking from this 20 million that we designate 9.8 million to help us with paying for the first year of the LA tax project. We believe this project is critical. I know we've talked about it with all the members, and so I will wait for questions on that, but we're asking for 9.8 million for LA tax. Also, there were finance finance did not have a section in the proposed budget in which filled positions were identified for cuts. A lot of departments were, but our department was not. However, there were 5 positions that we believe filled positions that were inadvertently cut. We'd like to be able to add those back as well. The other ask, as part of the 20, and I promise we're not going to spend all of it, but the other ask that we have is $300,000 in overtime that was cut. This is, typically, we rely on savings from our vacancies to pay for our overtime needs. This allows us to ramp up in our permit season in the fall. Whatever revenue we collect from our permit season, it's all general fund. So we no longer have a cushion to assist us in this effort, so we're asking for $300,000 in overtime. Once we add up everything that we're asking for, essentially, of the 20 million, we would be 5.9 million would go back to the general fund for whatever the committee would want
That
to do.
new revenue.
And that's about it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Councilwoman Hernandez to start with the questions, and then we'll go from there. Councilwoman.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. Thank you so much, Finance, for being here with us today. So you gave us a couple proposals that come with costs, but that come with some revenue. And I will be asking questions about that. But first, I wanted you to have us walk through LA tax a little bit. Because I don't know if my colleagues yet are familiar of how critical the software, the program is, right? Can you walk us through the specifics of the offset plan within the Office of Finance's letter? Oh, we already talked about that earlier, sorry. What I would like to do, before I get into questions, is request a budget memo on implementation of the offset plan, including necessary funding for this fiscal year's LA tax program, if that's okay. All right. And you already walked us through the programs that the offsets that you uplifted. Honestly, it sounds like a lot compared to all the deductions we have to make, right? But I think, could you please clearly define to us what that investment actually looks like? Can you give us just the numbers? You invest this many bodies, this is how much money you'll get for both of these, please.
The proposal package, the revenue proposals, that's what
Yes.
you would like for me to walk you through?
Just the numbers very quickly. We don't have to dive into it. I
Yes,
think.
okay. So the first package, we're essentially proposing to bring in 18 million in revenue. What's the ask? A total of, so this is slide, and I apologize. I'm rushing through this.
You're good, you're good.
Slide number 4.
Yes.
Slide number 4. We're asking for 3.2 million. So this includes a total of 25 positions. The breakdown is 15 TCOs, 10 customer service specialists, 200,000 for as-needed staffing, 200,000 for overtime, 400,000 for mailing services. Altogether, 3.2. We need to spend 3.2 to make 18.
And in the first year, right? But then it's an ongoing revenue of 10 million per year?
Yes,
Wonderful, thank you. So
that's the first package.
which is not a lot of investment for a lot of bang for a buck that we're gonna get. For the next one, please.
Second package, in order to generate 2 million, we're asking to spend and be provided with resources that amount to $365,000. That's 3 positions, 2 TCO2s, 1 TCO3.
Wonderful, and that 300,000 plus investment would generate 2 million annually, correct?
Yes,
And both of those new revenues would be going into our general fund, is that correct?
yes, specifically business tax.
Wonderful, thank you. And I know I was talking about LA tax earlier, but can you talk about why we need to even think about LA tax and invest in that?
Yes. LA Tax is our tax administration system. It was built in 2004. It essentially tracks and administers over a third of the city's general fund. So all business tax receipts, TOT, parking occupancy, all of it is tracked through LA Tax. We provide a service to other city departments as well. We also collect fees for them, so we collect fire alarm, police alarm, cannabis fees, tobacco-related fees. All of that is tracked through LA Tax. Why should we replace LA Tax? Number one, because, and most important, we want to be able to prevent a second critical system failure. In December of 2023, our system failed us right before we were starting our 2024 renewal season. What happened? It meant that for several months, our taxpayers, a good 2 months, our taxpayers had no access to an online system. They were unable to make payments. And so a lot of them had to either mail in their payments, or they were emailing us about payments, or they came to the public counters. There was the system that was one effect of the crash. Another effect of the crash, the system was processing payments incorrectly. It was making duplicate entries when there was only one payment in place. At some point, we had cash coming into our treasury, but because LA Tax had crashed, we were unable to decipher who the cash belonged to. We didn't know which taxpayer it belonged to. We didn't know how much that taxpayer had paid. And so once we were able to get the system up and running, it took months of reconciliation, manual reconciliation. FMS and LA Tax stopped talking to each other. So even though we were collecting cash and we were able to get LA Tax uploaded, we were unable to, at the same time, simultaneously report what that revenue looked like on a daily basis. So if you look at what January of 2024 and February of 2024 look like in FMS, there's 2 months of revenue missing, and then all of a sudden we book in March. We had a list of over 50 critical items just like this. This was a couple of examples that we've had to address, and this issue went on for several months. So even though the system is stable, we cannot guarantee that this won't happen again. And that is a really, really scary thing. So there's a lot of still unresolved issues. Our system is not operating efficiently. LA Tax and FMS still don't automatically collect on a daily basis. And what we do know is that our workload continues to grow and the number of accounts continues to grow within the system. So it's extremely fragile. There's a whole positive upside to the public as well, which is allowing our taxpayers to be more independent, not have to call in for every question, being able to see what their tax history looks like without reaching out to finance, without not having to call us just to print out their business tax certificate. We force our taxpayers to come to the public counters and to interact with us, and people just don't have time for that. So stability, and that's the upside for the public.
Thank you. So the system's old, the system's broken, it has crashed on us. It has led to us having to do a lot of recovery work for several months. And what you're asking for is to bring this system to the 21st century.
Yes.
So that we don't have to have customers come to the windows anymore. So that we're able to process and track better, so we don't have to worry about crashes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate the presentation. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, thank you, Councilwoman Hernandez, for laying it out, but I want to ask that we have a memo request to CLA and CAO to prepare a memo to effectuate the recommendations in your departmental budget response letter, specifically recommendations 1 through 6, to accept your proposed offsets.
That should I?
Councilwoman Hutt, followed by Councilmember Blumenfield, followed by Councilmember McCosker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. And I have a couple of questions. What type of resources are needed to help increase tax collection?
Well, we think that the two packages that we've presented, there's many opportunities to increase tax collection, but we're trying to simplify that by focusing in on 2 specific divisions within our office. The first one is the discovery unit. where we're requesting the 3.2 million, which would allow us to
Get the 18.
to get to the 18. And then the second is investing in our collections operation.
Thank you. So in your opinion, would a one-year window tax delinquency amnesty program be helpful to allow businesses to have their penalties, fines, and interest waived in order to collect on the base tax owed?
Matt Crawford for Office of Finance. We have done tax amnesty programs in the past. The general model for that is to do a bunch of communications out and inform taxpayers that are not registered or have fallen behind. Essentially, we give them an opportunity to become current, and we forgive all the accrued penalties. So you would pay the taxes that you should have paid in the first place, plus interest, and then we forgive the penalties. It is possible to do that. I will say we did it relatively recently in 2020. So, I mean, obviously over time, the number of taxpayers that could take advantage of that slowly grows, and so you can't do an amnesty every year. We could take a look at it. I don't know how much bang for the buck it would be. We've discussed it a little bit internally, and the broad amnesty program is a relatively high impact, high workload operation because of the level of outward communication we have to do. The other aspect, just trying to kind of consider staffing around it, is that at least for the 2020 amnesty, the staff that ran that program is in fact the exact same people who would be doing the tax discovery program. So if we're going to do a full team going on tax discovery, we would need to find additional resources to run an amnesty program.
I see. So I would like to request a budget memo to explore a tax delinquency amnesty program, including how much is owed in general to the city and how much is owed by the cannabis industry and any other industry breakdown that would be helpful to the committees as we craft a solution. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Great, thank you. First, I want to applaud you for being creative and for proposing ways to increase our revenue. It's a nice breath of fresh air to get some revenue-generating proposals in here, and appreciate the great work that you do. I wanted to ask you something, may seem out of the blue, but I was talking with some of our labor partners, or one of our labor partners in particular, and they were implying that we're not in such a bad situation because we have this $15 billion piggy bank. And I was a little incredulous trying to figure out what that's about, and so I drilled down on it to see what they're talking about, and I wanted to walk through it with you. So what they were talking about is on page 376 of the budget, this document says condition of the Treasury, and it indicates the various city funds that have a balance of over $15 billion. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. It's my understanding these funds are all invested in short-term cash and thus provide a fairly relative minimal rate of return. And I guess what they were implying is that there are ways to maximize that return that would get us a whole lot of money. So part of my question is, could the city generate additional revenue by investing some of these assets in longer-term funds that earn higher rates of return, or even investing them in vehicles that have the potential for higher returns, even if that comes with some risk? Generally, and then I wanted to ask you specifically about that chart and what some of those funds actually are. So I'm referring to page 376. It says condition of the Treasury. It's not actually a piggy bank, but it is a.
That document. It's that one. Yeah.
It does show our various things: the reserve fund, the general fund, the special purpose fund, which I'm not sure what that is, capital projects fund, public service enterprise fund, et cetera.
So, yes, good afternoon. Tom Juarez, Chief Investment Officer here in Finance. So the general pool, as you mentioned, consists of, or roughly hovers right around 15 billion today. That consists of literally hundreds of funds within that pool. The majority of which are the proprietary funds. There's some special interest funds, and then the general fund itself, which is, excuse me, hovers typically between 5 and 8% or so of the entire general pool. So you're looking at roughly 750 million or so on any given month to maybe a little over $1 billion total, but those funds are already spoken for, so to speak. So it's used to pay for payroll, contractual services, those types of expenditures. The general pool itself consists of 3 portfolios. It has our shorter-term core or liquidity portfolio. It has a longer-dated 1 to 5 year reserve portfolio, and then it has a 5 to 10 year, longer-dated treasury portfolio. All of the funds within that pool capture the higher rates of return, which vary from overnight investments of right around 4.5% or so, out to 10 years, which are up to right around 4.25% right now. And that seems kind of odd, right? Because you think the shorter end of the portfolio or treasury curve would be lower. Right now, there's an inversion going on. So shorter term rates are fairly high at 4.25% right now. But as you go out on the yield curve, as we invest daily, it's from 2 years to 10 years. And it fluctuates between like 3 5/8 or 3.625 to roughly 4.35 out to 10 years. And we're capturing that on a daily basis. We're reinvesting. But more specific to your question, the general fund is earning a higher rate of return, and it is earning it daily. But again, those funds are specified to a specific use that is approved during the budget process, that is approved by the respective governing boards, whether it's LAWA, DWP, Harbor, et cetera. So that's essentially the general pool.
So is there, the implication was that there are other cities that maybe are more aggressive in the way that they manage those funds, and if we were to just tweak, we could somehow, on a $15 billion investment?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So our investment style we've had in place now for several years. Going back to 20 years since I joined the city, we've had the short-term core portfolio, which invests overnight out to 1 year to meet the liquidity needs of the city and the proprietaries. And then we have a 1 to 5 year portfolio that we invest more aggressively in US Treasuries, corporate notes, mortgage-backed securities, asset-backed securities, which earn a higher rate of return. Most municipalities stay within a relatively short band of 1 to 3 years. We're going out from really 1 day out to 10 years. So we are capturing the higher yield. Right now, again, the shorter end of the spectrum in terms of the treasury curve is higher because of the inversion, right? How long that's going to last is anybody's guess, with the current rates, and the current economic situation. The Fed may come in and lower rates abruptly, and we would see the reversal occur relatively quickly. However, with our pool, we are locked in out to 10 years, currently like at 4 5/8, 4 3/4%. So years from now, we'll be able to enjoy those higher rates of return.
Okay. And the special purpose funds with $5 million in it, what is that?
Yeah, those special purpose funds are just that. They're designated for certain use, whether it's primarily grant money, from my understanding, speaking with the controller's office, and they're for specific use. We do earn interest off of those, and again, they're earning the general pool rate, which right now is about 3.25% or so. But that is in longer-term investments.
But we're scraping those funds for anything that we could be using in this year's budget. Is that right? I mean, I'm assuming, and similar to public service enterprise funds, at $8 billion. I'm sorry, there's 5 billion and 8 billion. Those are big numbers. We're also scraping.
Right, so the enterprise funds consist of all the proprietary departments, DWP, LAWA, Harbor, and again, their participation was within the general pool.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Councilmember McCosker.
Thanks very much. I just had some follow-ups on that. So the actual for 2023, 2024 was 15,865,000,000, with the general fund portion being 1,262,000,000. And it's spread out over the other funds. My sense of this, from the same discussions that the council member probably had, my sense of this is that these amounts did go up significantly over the past several years. Were there new entrants into our pooled investments? Was there a time when we weren't taking in some of the special funds? Because if you go back several years, it was a much lower, earlier in your career, it was a much lower amount. Either you're a great investor or there was some injection of cash.
Yeah,
Or both.
Right, so the pool has grown basically from 5 billion, say, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
To roughly 14.5 billion today. A lot of that is the proprietary departments and all the other citywide departments that have injected cash into the portfolio itself. Some of it is the rate of return as well. We probably earn on average or actually increase the value of the portfolio somewhere around $150 million a year.
Yeah.
Total interest earned on that pool, roughly, like for this year, is right around 475 million, of which the city's portion will be right around 80 million, give or take a few million. But yeah, it has increased primarily just because the constant reinvestment and the constant flow of funds in and out.
Simple question, probably has a complex answer. But how do we make that money work for us in our current budget circumstance? Is it internal borrowing? Is there some way of applying more of this money by allocating some of it into the budget, reducing our level of held investment? What is it? Is there anything?
Well, the actual investments or fund balances are determined by this body and, again, the governing boards. We in the Office of Finance make the decisions based on our cash flows. So we see cash flows. We know, for instance, that there's roughly 140 million in payroll going out every 2 weeks. We need to immunize that by investing in a short-term, whether it's commercial paper or a treasury note of some sort, to immunize or make payment on that 140 million. So we're only as good as our cash flows, and we rely heavily on the departments and the proprietary departments to provide us with accurate cash flows on their needs, whether it's overnight or out to 5 years and beyond.
So can I add to that?
Yep.
As Tom mentioned, the general fund portion of the pool is anticipated to generate 80 million for this fiscal year. That's the interest revenue specific from the general fund investment that makes it a part of the revenue budget, that rolls into the revenue budget. Every dollar that's in the pool has a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Every general fund dollar that's in the pool is backed by the budget plan. Whatever proceeds that are invested in the pool is backed by a capital improvement plan. Whatever proprietary revenues is invested as part of the general pool is backed by the proprietary budgets. So there's no way of leveraging non-general fund dollars in the general pool to benefit the general fund. So to increase the general fund revenue interest requires more general fund revenue going into the general pool and also increase in interest rates. And the investment team has a plan and approach in terms of the steps that they take to maximize the rate of return on that. I don't know if that helped, but.
It does, there's a follow-up, but, oh, I'm sorry. It's up to you to decide.
Yep.
No, it does help a lot, but the amount that is general fund, described as general fund over the last couple of years has ranged from 1.2 billion to an estimated 705 million this year. Are you telling me that every single one, the principal of that, every single dollar of the principal is already allocated to some budget purpose in our, $8 billion budget?
Yes.
Every single dollar?
Yes.
And the interest is pumped back into our income and also accounted for because of the need to balance the budget?
Yes. So the team assumes that whatever we invest from the general fund principal is going to generate 84 million for the 25-26 year. That is a part of your $8 billion revenue plan. Your revenue plan, which is matched by the $8 billion expenditure plan. If our projections are off and we come in higher, then you have a surplus. And then as part of the budget process, you decide how to spend that money. If we come in under, like for example, for this fiscal year, for 24-25, we projected the budget was 84 million, but we've revised it down to 80. So we're $4 million short. So that means the revenue plan for the 24-25 year was 4 million short, specifically because of interest.
Mm-hmm. So hear me out on this. What would your response be if I had a budget memo request for information on our city's investment reports, this report, including the impacts on outflows from the portfolios into the city's financial statements, including the statement of revenues, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows, including specific information on the inflows and the outflows between the general fund and the reserve fund from 2017 to 2025. Would that instruction make sense to you? Is there such a report that would be helpful?
Could you say it again? I'm sorry.
Information from our city's investment reports that include the impacts on outflows from the portfolios into the city's financial statements, including the statements of revenues, the balance sheet, the statement of cash flows, including specific information on the inflows and outflows between the general fund and the reserve fund.
So essentially, how is that activity captured? Through whatever different, whatever money flows in, whatever money flows out, what does that cash flow look like?
And maybe simplifying for my purposes only, maybe it's just 5 years of that last question you posed, or that last hypothetical you posed back to me. Have we had surpluses that we could pump back into the general fund? Have we had estimates that were too low that caused us to go short?
So every year, we're set up that way.
Yeah.
Every year, if we have a surplus and we see that we're generating more interest than was planned, then that becomes a part of the budget and finance, the FSR process, where you determine how you're going to use the surplus. Are you going to use it to offset a deficit somewhere else? Are you going to use it to pay for a project that you need funding for? So there is a process that's already in place.
I'm just asking, how did that process come out over the last 8 years?
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Hernandez.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman.
And budget is what it is.
I'll be fast. I'd like to put a budget memo forward. I'd like to request the CAO to identify funding for the public bank feasibility study. We're talking about making money off of our money. We're talking about reducing our bank fees. One of those ways is potentially a regional public bank where we can even work with other cities in the region. So I would just like us to even do the feasibility study. That's why I'm requesting that budget memo. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Okay.
We're going to walk away. I just want to stress that in order for us to be able to deliver on the 20 million, we need flexibility to be able to hire and fill those positions. So the report back we'll have will highlight what that could look like.
Okay. Yeah, look, we want to effectuate 1 through 6 in this memo, basically. So show us all the path. Okay. Councilmember McCosker has a follow-up.
On that point, exactly on that point, when personnel, if you're out there in the ether listening, we want to know precisely how to effectuate it so that we could find the classes that are slated for elimination that could go straight into your department to effectuate this 1 through 6, as you say in your memo. I think we're committed to that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here in the presentation. Next, we're going to hear from General Services. This is our last department of the evening.
They're shutting the lights out on us.
Welcome. If you could please introduce yourself and your team.
I'm Tony Royster, General Manager, Department of General Services. AGMs, we have Melody, Melissa, Emily, and Gerald, and also our Director of our budget is Elizabeth. You've received our letter, which outlines some of the eliminations and impacts to services and my concerns about the expense reductions, restoring a few critical positions, offset proposals, and the restore revolving fund. To recap, I'm requesting to restore 117 positions, revised from 112, and have identified $6 million in offsets. We are still reviewing the budget and may have some adjustments to these offsets, but are committed to working with the committee to restore positions. Additionally, there are 12 revenue-generating material testing positions that could negatively impact revenue if not restored because they generate more than the direct and indirect costs. So, I have my letter. We're here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Councilwoman Hutt to lead this round of questions.
Thank you. Yes, I'm ready. Everybody ready?
Yes.
Last but not least,
Yes,
right? Well, thank you for being here. We definitely went through your memo, and so I have some questions. The first one is, what is the impact of the $1.7 million in encumbrances to be transferred from the store's revolving fund?
That $1.72 million was used to purchase parts for helicopters. They're in the process of being shipped, and it's very important when those...
Can you move
excuse me, can you hear me now?
a little better, yeah.
Okay. That $1.72 million are attributed to parts we've ordered for helicopter parts, for LAPD and also fire department, and also maybe DWP, and those parts will be in during the 25-26 budget time, and it's very important when those parts are arriving that we pay for them, and because as we know, our helicopters are a very critical piece of equipment that we need to make sure we have availability for that, but if that's not funded, it's going to have some challenges in availability for those helicopters.
I see. So I have another question. What do we anticipate is the overall cost of fuel for the current fiscal 24-25? And do we feel the budget provides a good estimate of our fuel needs and costs for the 25-26?
We're estimating probably that our fuel costs will be between 45 to 46 million. Some additional funding was provided in the budget, but when it comes to fuel prices, they fluctuate, and you have very little, power or discretion. What we do if there's any issues during the year, we will report back through the FSFR if there's any problem. Right now, I think it's about 45.6 million, but if we need more, we'll let you know. But if you look at fuel, Fuel is being utilized by 6 departments, which parts police, fire, sanitation, street services, and recreation and parks. So 6 departments consume close to 96% of our fuel.
Okay, so under the proposed budget, how will pest control, particularly rodent control, change at the Civic Center complex?
I think it was a 20% reduction in our pest control, and what's, it's going to decrease the frequency, and I think it's critical that we continue supporting that, because if we go back maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we had some serious issues with pest control and whatever, and we need to make sure we stay on top of that. And because of health and safety issues, it's critical that we continue to support that type of services. And also, not just Civic Center, you got animal shelters, you got libraries, you have police stations. You have some challenges sometimes, like at the Central Police Station, because of its location. Mm-hmm. It's critical that we have those funding to support that type of work.
Okay, and there are some instructions in Exhibit H for street services and street lighting to implement a work plan for DWP. Will GSD need resources to support the DWP work?
Most likely what we will have to do, we can check with street services and street lighting and see what the depths or the plan, and report back to you what resources we would need to support those programs at DWP that they're involved in.
Mm-hmm. And what is the impact of eliminating the revenue-generating materials testing positions?
If you eliminate those positions, we could lose about $2.6 million in revenue that we receive from LAX. We support them because in these projects they're having for renovations, or it's about, I think, over $1 billion program there, and the work that we do is very important and critical for them to complete their constructions. So the money we receive is usually beyond the amount of money we need for indirect and direct costs. So it really is a profit to the city by supporting these positions. And we think will be additional $350,000, beyond what the cost is that will come back to the city if we.
How much? Say it again.
$350,000.
Okay. So I'd like to request a budget memo on GSD's proposed offsets as outlined in their budget letter, Madam Chair. GSD. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just ask that we, when you prepare that, you list the restored proposed positions in order of priority for yourself?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Colleagues? I'll start over with Councilwoman Hernandez and then back to Blumenfield.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'd like to request a budget memo requesting the city attorney, GSD, and CAO to come back with the report back on potential liability exposure from cutting 27 staff in the building maintenance division, please.
Sure, we'll take care of that.
Thank you. With the net cut of 218 regular positions department-wide and a large share coming from critical service delivery units, how will the department reprioritize its operations, and what services will be delayed or reduced as a result? And that's my last question.
So when it comes to that, I think it's 218 positions that support all the departments in the city of Los Angeles, and it could impact a number of services. So for instance, vehicles, we maintain close to 11,000 pieces of equipment. It could impact street services, sanitation, street lighting, Department of Recreation and Parks, transportation. And what we do with, like I say, throughout the city, what the GSE does is supports departments. And if they can't get their equipment, their supplies, or fuel, like for instance, we purchase about 14 to 18 million gallons of fuel. You can have a fire truck, you can have a trash truck with no fuel. It's not going anywhere. And what we do, we're behind the scene. As we say, our motto is we're the heart of the city. If the heart stops, the city stops. So it's critical that if you fund other departments and don't fund us, in essence, you make them useless as they can't do anything. So it's important that they have the fuel, the supplies, building maintenance staff, and fleet services staff. For instance, you take during the fire, doing out in Pacific Palisade. We maintain close to 28 helicopters. And all three departments support is police, fire, and DWP. We're using their helicopters. But if we didn't repair those helicopters and maintain them, you really got a problem.
Thank you. And actually, Chairwoman, if I could just ask one more thing, or say one comment, actually. I visited the fire maintenance yard, which is in my district, in Lincoln Heights, and I visited the BSL yard. And in both of those facilities, essentially half the facility was GSD. For fire maintenance, it was all the ordering of supplies, the car parts, the tires. So I just wanted to uplift that as examples of like, yes, if we don't fund, like for example, the warehouse clerks.
Right.
Like that means that firefighters will have a tough time going to pick up their uniforms.
Right, correct.
If we don't have those clerks, those warehouse clerks ordering supplies, that means we might not be able to fix something on one of the rigs or the ambulance. So I wanted to uplift that I've seen that direct connection because it's hard to understand how deeply you all do support some of these departments. So,
which is a great example. No, it's not just just getting the parts, but if you don't pay for the parts are not coming. Yeah. So you need payment clerks. So it's a whole cycle you have to look. If one of the links drop, the whole chain fall apart. So it's important that everything we have so we can support departments so they can be successful.
Great, thank you. Another reason why we should look at our structure. Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Blumenfield.
Great, thank you, and I appreciate all my colleagues, what they're saying so far, and Tony, certainly appreciate you and the department. You guys are really the glue that keeps this city together, and I try to remind us of that every time we go through this budget, because this, as you mentioned, this is so critical. Everything you do is critical to maintaining the city. I was curious on your prioritization list, you put the custodians ahead of the mechanics and a bunch of other positions. Is that in part because there's less vehicle maintenance and others because of other service cuts in other departments, or why were they listed above the other positions?
Because some of the areas that they do are very critical, like police stations, you have jails, you have different holding cells, you have showers and areas that you have to maintain for the police officers. And if you don't do it in the correct way, it will really jeopardize their health. And also, we have a number of libraries that we support that we need to make sure we have a clean and healthy location or facilities for the public to come in. But last but not least, we need to make sure we maintain these facilities for our city employees. Because some of the challenges that we encountered back during the pandemic or whatever was because of lack of custodial. And it's just, you don't really realize it until it's not there. And, and it's very important and critical. And we can look at it and see if there's adjustments, but it's just, you're dealing with health and safety issues, especially in the fire stations and different things like that. It's just, the fire police stations, that you don't want your police officers with infections and whatever, if they're not clean and sanitized. Very important. But we try to balance it out, because if you take that particular group, since 2023, 24, they've lost 117 positions. If you go way back, it's we used to have 600 custodians. We're down to 200.
Wow, that's startling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you another issue. GSD is key to the city's transition towards the GHG elimination to meet our climate crisis. Mm-hmm. In recent years, cities invested in building projects and know-how and been very active, and we've worked together on that. Can you describe what this budget does to our efforts at adding solar, batteries, and ending gas usage, and basically decarbonization?
Well, in essence, it eliminated the program. It really isn't, we can't support it anymore because the positions, will be gone.
Yeah, that's sadly my interpretation of it as well, but I wanted to hear it from you. So it's something I'm concerned about, and I know we can't do everything, but I think this is important. So I'd like to request a memo to instruct GSD, with the assistance of CAO, to report back with positions and projects to maintain progress in the alignment of all city facilities and practices for clean energy generation and storage, including building upgrades due to end-of-life cycles related to lighting, heating, and ventilation as described in the Building Decarbonization Work Plan that could be funded completely or partially by LADWP, such as CLIP, BOSS, or other programs. And hope we can get a memo back on that.
Sure, be glad to.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Councilmember McCosker?
A couple things. We talked about the postage, the $1 million account for postage is in your letter.
Yeah.
Just tell us a little bit about this, because I think I was surprised that some of it comes at your cost, and then there's a point at which folks begin to pay for the postage. Can you describe it for me?
Yes, we have a certain amount of postage budgeted for each department or each area or agency. And if they go beyond that, then we have to either find additional money or either have them transfer money. Sometimes there's maybe some departments that are special funded. Maybe we can work this year to have them to fund some of their postage.
Right.
But at the same time, what we're attempting to do, because we have some one-time credits for this one-time, it's an additional $1 million that we can reduce in order to try to address some of the shortfalls we have in our budget.
And Councilmember Hutt, did you already make the request that we consider the suggested offset in the general services letter on this issue? Okay, great. Okay. Thank you so much. Earlier in the day, many hours ago, I was talking either to the mayor or to the CAO, and we talked about our properties.
Yes.
And it basically, what is the plan for asset maximization, for a way to maximize the value of our assets. Could I get a budget memo on a plan for taking properties and either making a one-time sale, which has its benefits and detriments, or a joint development with entities out there, or some sort of a lease arrangement where we actually use properties, and not every property would be ideal for this, use properties to generate income.
Sure, be glad to do that.
Thank you. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's $37. I wish. $37 million in MICLA for GSD, the managed fleet. Will you all have capacity to administer these funds to purchase and maintain these vehicles if the cuts are made that are proposed?
Was that the parts, or was that the fuel you were? What's the dollar?
That is the managed fleet. The $37 million for managed fleet.
Oh, fleet replacement. If you take our fleet, the age of our fleet, 55% or 50% of our fleet is beyond life cycle. So the amount of money we're getting it's good, but we would love to have more because of the age of our fleet. Because if your fleet is beyond life cycle, you're using more money to maintain them.
Yes, and my question was, with the proposed cuts, will you all be able to manage the $37 million in MICLA funding? Like, will you be able to spend that down?
Oh, yes,
with the proposed cuts?
We will be able to spend that, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Councilmember Blumenfield, did you have a question? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That was our last department presentation for the day. We've requested approximately 55 memos by my count. At this rate, we'll be well over 300, which is untenable, team. So asking folks to trim your lists tomorrow on memo asks. Tomorrow, which is Wednesday, April 30th, 2025, we'll hear from the Port of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Police Department, the Los Angeles Fire Department, the Emergency Management Department, the Personnel Department, our Information Technology Agency, and the Ethics Commission. This meeting is now in recess. Thank you.